we're going to be looking at some advanced air mobility now. So if Jose Fernandes from Honeywell and Alexandre Zaramela from Moya.Aero would like to come up and join me. Brandel mentioned it earlier that eVTOLs are much anticipated, particularly in this region. So, Alex, seeing as you got up here first, I'll start with you. Do you just want to give everyone an understanding of Moya and what sort of aircraft you're developing?
Oh, hello. So thank you for the event one more time, Oscar and Alexandre. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, we're facing a lot of change, like in the last few years, and the evolution of advanced air mobility, and we see now good perspectives in terms of operation. There's like for the passenger segment, we can see Joby and Archer in the United States, and I can also consider Beta already flying and not operating yet, but like going through certification. And for the cargo logistics, what Moya is doing is we also see some companies developing and in the same stage that we are, like prototyping and flight testing. Roy from the United States and Might Fly, and us here in Brazil. So I think like there's good perspectives for the new future to see advanced air mobility like became a reality and join the segment of like cargo logistics and also passengers.
And Jose, everyone in the room will be familiar with Honeywell from your engines and things like that, but what's Honeywell doing in the sort of advanced air mobility space, and how are you sort of approaching this new technology that's being developed for aviation?
Oh, thank you very much again for the invitation, and it's a pleasure being here for another year. Yes, Honeywell have been a major player in the aerospace industry, as everybody knows, and the air mobility, advanced air mobility, has been one of the critical industries that we have been investing in the recent years. We see that this industry is gonna worth something around $1 trillion in another 15 years by 2040. And we have been developing a range of different solutions to that industry, from different propulsion systems, as well as specific navigation controls, sensors, radars, electronics, lighting, and connectivity. So there is a lot of R&D investments being made as we speak, because we truly believe that this industry that is being created is going to really transform the aerospace industry in the upcoming years.
Zara, you mentioned that there's a lot of players in the US. You mentioned a couple, Joby, Archer, and this is truly a global aviation change we're seeing. What makes Brazil different from other places in the world to be developing this technology, and what makes it sort of a good place for you to be developing your aircraft as well?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, Brazil, I think it's kind of like, it's very unique in terms of aviation. We consider that we have the first man that fly an aircraft in the world, Santos Dumont, before the Wright brothers. There's a big discussion on that, but we believe that. And a certified aircraft.
Yeah, that's an important clarification.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So, and since that, we have been developing aviation in Brazil, and now we have Embraer, they're the third largest, biggest company in the world. And we have ANAC, our agency that talks in the same level as the FAA, United States, and also the EASA, which like we don't see other agencies like having the support that the ANAC have on our industry. And on top of that, we have the cost, the Brazilian cost, that's like compared to the dollar, so it's much cheaper to have to hire an engineer in Brazil. And because of this historical approach for aviation, we have a huge, we have like a lot of aeronautic engineers and a lot of workforce in Brazil that can support that industry. And especially for the advanced air mobility, we are very on the edge of technology compared to other nations in Europe, in the United States, being in the same level. I think we have a great opportunities in Brazil, like to advance, to be one of the first to use advanced like eVTOLs and as a common use. Yeah.
Jose?
Well, talking specifically about Brazil, we see the country as a great opportunity for developing this new business within the company. Brazil is one of the largest countries in the world, and the diversity of industries that we have in Brazil, it's quite vast. Starting by agriculture, where this type of technology can be of great use, but not only agriculture, but also the mining industry, where you have large mines where you require a different approach on the cargo logistics or people transportation, so on and so forth. So there is a great opportunity for not only Brazil, but also the surrounding countries that we have in the region to really benefit from this new industry that is being created.
Are there any other use cases that are prime sort of in this region to be, for AAM to adopt beyond sort of the agriculture and the mining, things like SAR, EMS, things like that?
Well, I would say that, well, we cannot forget the everything starts because of the urban mobility, right? But not only, when you talk about urban mobility, usually you're talking about transporting people in a very congested cities on where the ground transportation is very saturated. But also there are a lot of other applications that can be developing in the urban cities, for example, rescue, medical emergence, and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of different aspects of the businesses that we could take in consideration, and I'm sure that Moya is also developing a lot of new cargo logistics, right?
I would say also offshore. We said about for the urban air mobility, we have São Paulo, that's the largest operation of helicopters in the world, and number 2 is Rio. That's more into the offshore business. So I'll put that. And you said about the rescue and all firefighting as well. And in our case, using the autonomous drones, there are some operations that there is a risk, putting like the crew, or flying in a bad weather condition, or flying at night. For example, in the offshore, you have some restrictions on that. So with the use of autonomous vehicles, you can avoid that. Yeah.
You say there's the most helicopters in the world in Sao Paulo. I've been here twice now, and I've still never seen a helicopter here. So, like, I still don't believe anyone that says that. I'm yet to see that, but maybe I need to come a third time, and that will change.
During the coffee break, I just checked with my friends if São Paulo is still the first one, and it is.
You mentioned autonomy there, and that's something you're both sort of working on. How do you think of it in terms of what people expect from autonomy, in terms of what it's going to do, what it's going to allow, how it's going to sort of integrate with the current aviation ecosystem, whether you're looking at sort of intercity or sort of beyond in sort of outside of cities?
I would start with the word trust. First of all, I think the ordinary people would like to trust those autonomous systems, right? Because regardless if you are transporting a person or a cargo, you need to be sure that those operations work in a very safe way, let's call it. So, and in order to make it, there are a lot of challenges that have to be overcome. So you need to assure that all the companies certify those equipments in the proper way. The regulators are closely involved in all aspects of those certifications. All the air system management needs to be under the same ecosystem that those aircrafts are going to be flying, so on and so forth. So to me, in a nutshell, trust will be key. So people need to understand, so the industry have to communicate clearly to the population and to users of those equipments how that is going to work, how safe is that going to work, and how that ecosystem is going to play all together with the aerospace industry. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to fly that a new industry that is being developed.
Yeah, and when we say autonomous, it's like actually it's kind of automatic, because we still need like some humans on the loop for even if operating like autonomous drone. We have like someone on the ground that's may not necessarily is flying the aircraft, but like making decisions like land, come back home, deploy the parachute for an emergency, something like that. And what Jose is saying about trust is like how we can mature the technology and to some point fly over the cities and flying with people inside. So, and we have to first like understand how this ecosystem is going to work. And of course, we're talking about like thousands of vehicles flying, and also how we're going to address the communication in between the aircraft, in between the humans that's still flying manned. So, but the whole system is, I mean, what's happening is like we're just going step by step with the small drones, getting bigger, and
this is one of the things that ANAC's doing currently, because it's got a regulatory sandbox at Campo de Marte Airport, where they're currently looking at how infrastructure is going to work and presumably working out the levels of autonomy and how that's going to integrate with other aviation stuff is going to be looked at, and that's going on for the next 24 months. Is that right? Where they're going to sort of develop a lot of this sort of gradual integration, this sort of evolution of how all the infrastructure is going to work together, isn't it?
I think the key word here would be integration, right? So how do you run all those prototypes and create this new ecosystem in order to operate along with the already defined aerospace procedures and routes that exist today around the world? So by running those type of activities and trying to integrate as early as possible, that will help this industry to be formed more robust and sharp to entering the market earlier than later. So I foresee this initiative is a great step to really move fast on this new industry.
Yeah, they're creating this sandbox. Also, São José dos Campos, they have a sandbox in the airport as well, and also Campo de Marte. And the idea is just to understand how it's going to work in the future, and also especially for passengers, it's not going to be an helipad. The vertiport it's like a gate of Guarulhos or Congonhas. So you're just going to go. By the time you're in the vertiport, you are inside the terminal, to make things quicker. And in our case, we're flying only in remote areas. So we're also trying to create sandboxes to operate in a remote area, and I think our first operation is going to be offshore. So we minimize the risk, and then we can be different than what's happening in Campo de Marte and in São José.
The government's being very good on the regulatory side, but on the other side of that, it's very expensive to develop all this technology. Alex, you know this firsthand. Trying to raise money is a challenging task for anyone, and we've seen a couple of big name companies in the last 6 months get into trouble. So and you've also just received a grant from the Brazilian government. So how helpful have they been in sort of helping develop this new technology financially as well as sort of through the regulation?
Yeah, this is another point that Brazil is investing in advanced air mobility. So we have the BNDES, we have FINEP. They are financing innovation in the aviation specifically. FINEP recently created this mobile incentive to transform the human air mobility. We're also part of that. We also got some grant from the Brazilian government, and for sure there were a lot of investment in those companies. I mean, Lilium from Germany and also Volocopter. They could not succeed with a lot of investment on them. But I think it was something also that what Jose said about trust. Like we still need to understand this technology, mature that, and just put to the public in a way that like is going to be safe.
In the way that we from Honeywell see that the financial aspect of this new industry is in two ways. First, there is a piece that is capital heavy based on OEMs, and the other one is lean software type of investments for startup companies that are getting to this segment. So two very different capital expectations for that industry. And both will have to be funded by both private and public agencies. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to make this industry, let's say, to fly, right? The private there is a lot of money flowing to this new segment globally. It's not different in Brazil. We have startups putting their own money on those programs, but also governments, and FINEP, like Zara just mentioned, is one of the aspects of that funding capability in country. But globally, we need to continue getting money from different agencies as well in order to promote innovation that is going to create new routes for deploying this new industry.
We've got a couple of questions on Slido, so if we could get Slido on the screen. One of them is, what's the market outlook for civil advanced air mobility aircraft in Brazil? So when do you think they're going to sort of start integrating? When are we going to start seeing them flying? That's what everyone wants to know, but no one's actually got an answer, I think.
Well, we as a company, as a supplier of that industry, we are ready to supply any material that I just mentioned, any solution that we just mentioned. Different type of propulsion systems, navigation, controls, connectivity, radar, sensors, so on and so forth. We are ready for that. But in order to start that industry in Brazil, doesn't only depend on the suppliers and technology partners. That is going to depend on how fast that entire ecosystem works together in order to get projects certified, projects and production certified, then to create the correct infrastructure to support that, the new venues that are going to be used for that industry, so on and so forth. There is a lot of things going on. I do not foresee this starting before 5 years, but I think we are moving on the right way in order to get there sometime in the short future.
Yeah, I would say maybe 5 years for maybe EV saying 2028. We're thinking about start the operation in 2027, but like for remote areas and autonomous and like unmanned. Yeah, but I think it's a trick question. Like maybe 5 years. I think it's and things it's happening like. I mean, 2 years ago we didn't have the ecosystem. We have like the OEMs there, and then we have the UTM. So now everybody's talking together, and we are understanding what's really is going to be the aviation of the future.
I mean, if I asked that question in 2019, everyone would have said 5 years in 2019. So it just seems perpetually to be 5 years away at the moment. But it seems like finally now there's a little bit of cohesion and momentum behind certain players in certain areas.
There was we thought that the battery's density would grow so it didn't happen. So this maybe we have like some like technological barriers, but we're figuring out like that we can be green and reduce the cost. It's not all about being green and being highly cost. So.
We've got another question about which AAM products are best suited to Brazil. Presumably Moya is probably the most suitable to Brazil, would you say, Alex? Sorry? Would you say Moya is the best AAM aircraft option for Brazil?
Yeah, I think Moya is the best, and Eve is the second one, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, well, I think we could have all seen that coming. And then Lincoln has said, autonomous systems will evolve. So it's like going from foot to horseback and then horseback to train. Hopefully it doesn't take as long to get to where we want to go in AAM as it did get from horseback to trains, but it's that sort of gradual evolution, and you're sort of integrating stuff into existing helicopter operations, and that's the route that you're looking at.
Right, exactly. So that is going to be a constant evolution of those solutions and how to make them more autonomous. We have been developing a lot of different solutions on the autonomous field, even like flying a big aircraft with just one pilot rather than 2 or 3. So we have been advanced a lot, but the point in order to get it to autonomous now goes more to regulation, to assure that those systems are redundant and robust enough in order to assure that the overall population believes on that technology and use it, being for transporting people or cargo that is going to be flying on the top of our heads across the city. So we need to be sure, and now I'm get back to the trust word again, we need to be sure that those systems are gonna not be harmful to the overall population on the places that they're gonna operate in order to assure that this could be successful. And like make a short analogy to the cars introduction a century ago, that is not an easy process. It's gonna happen faster than when it happened with cars, but it still takes the time, the right time, in order to start creating this completely new venture in the world.
We've got one final question before lunch. One word answer, which market will be demanding AAM use first? The agriculture, offshore, cargo, passenger, what's going to be the first one in Brazil?
Yeah, I think it's cargo and remote areas. I would go for, I think, offshore. There is a demand right now for the offshore. So with small packages, so instead of using a huge helicopter just to transport, like sometimes a small package, sometimes water, like water to drink in some platforms, I think it's going to be the first user, yeah, I would say offshore.
Slightly more than one word, but...
Yeah, so I would say, I agree with that. I think cargo logistics will be the low-hanging fruit. But also agro may be quite important. I don't think in the case of agro, the advanced air mobility is going to replace aircrafts that are used for row crops, but may be used for spraying agricultural defensives in large farms that you cannot use aircrafts. So for that type of application, given the size and the importance of the agro in Brazil, probably that could be a very nice segment that the advanced air mobility will be entering in the short future. And probably faster than the cargo logistics in the industry, where the environment is much more controlled and separated.
And on those excellent one-word answers, thank you, Alex. Thank you, Jose. And lunch is now prepared by Timbro, and it will be downstairs at the end of the corridor. Just go down the escalator, and it's down there. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.